All right, a comment asked me to rant about right values because I did the 8 values and the left values tests. And obviously, I did those because the 8 values one is for general political leanings, and the left values obviously is for differentiating and making more nuanced the leftist values. But let's go. I don't think I'm a right winger, so let's see if there's anything I feel like endorsing here. I mean, it does seem to have some distinctions here. A lot of this can tend towards leftism, I believe. Right values is a quiz for the people on the right of the spectrum based upon the left values quiz that seeks to identify your position on the right wing spectrum as the alternative to left values. If you are not a rightist, this quiz is obviously not suited for you and you should look for left values instead. You will be presented with a statement. You will have to answer with your opinion on the statement from strongly agree to strongly disagree, with each answer slightly affecting your score, blah, blah, blah. Okay, all right. Let's just see how a deep, deep left winger will do in right values. I got it. If I have the ability, I will vote for a conservative party. I will probably never do that. We should improve society by changing the system little by little over time. So I'm not necessarily full-on revolutionary, but I also have no strong affinity to necessarily doing it little by little. So I'm gonna have to go neutral. Weed and abortion should be legalized, yes. Changing the current system completely is not a good idea. All at once, probably not a good idea. Over time, yeah, probably a great idea. So I'll do the disagree. Preservation of culture is what we need. So I know how right-wingers mean this. In a sense, I believe there's some value to preserving cultural goods and art and music and some aesthetic rituals and traditions of people. So it's not like I want to enter the post-cultural stage where everyone has the same culture and so on and so on. But this is not what they mean. What they mean is they want to keep the brown people out because culture is to them not like an accumulation of these sort of artifacts and rituals in society, but a sort of homogenous racial and ethnic body. So disagree because I don't think in the kind you think. Changing the current system too quickly often leads to the worsening of people's lives. I'm neutral on this, I don't know. Or disagree even. I don't know if this is a true claim. Depends on the change. If it's a conservative making radical changes, most likely it will be worse for people. I support third/fourth wave feminism as well as the LGBT community. Yes, absolutely. Everything should belong to the state. Strongly disagree. The freer the market, the freer the people. Strongly disagree. The state owning people's property leads to tyranny. So when right-wingers speak of freedom, they usually refer almost exclusively to property rights, as that the fact that property rights exist is somehow like the only thing that they find. Well, and free speech, obviously, because they want to say the N word. But property right is kind of always what they hinge on, because the only metric by which they measure freedom is the kind of freedom to own stuff in order to ascend, basically, the hierarchy, and stuff which you then could use to, let's say, for example, let workers work on your field, and you basically only reaping the benefits of their labor. This is the kind of idea behind property, like inherently. So, state owning people's property leads to tyranny. So the issue is also still that the state can obviously be nefarious about privatizing property. So when we think about privatization, we usually tend to think of some like socialist or communist regime not privatization, nationalization, obviously. We tend to think of a communist or whatever regime taking it for itself and then doing whatever it wants with it instead of like having it be subject to the free market. So I feel like disagreeing with this, it does not lead to tyranny. The corporate tyranny, in my opinion, is way worse, because while in a state you at least have the democratic process, in a corporation you have fuck all, and right-wingers will defend this freedom to create unfreedom at the workplace as like the most important freedom. Well, I personally believe that most people are at work most of their days, which means that they are at workplaces where they have no democratic say over what happens to them. And those workplaces disproportionately affect how their lives are going to be. They spend like a third of their life at the workplace. They get the money they need to buy food and shelter from the workplace and much, much more. So it is obviously, in my view, much more tyrannical to have property rights as they are currently. So I disagree. Capitalism is a good economic system because people gain by contributing. So capitalism is not a good economic system because of what is outlined here. Capitalism has been a good economic system because it accelerated growth and expansion of industries, which led to more profits and more wealth which could be distributed around the people. But instead of, because it raised the lower floor. We have less poverty, less starvation, and so on than in times before, let's say before the Industrial Revolution. But this is not because it gives fairly to people who are contributing to capitalism, because the relationships of wealth are still largely disproportionate, where someone who's owning, someone who's in finance, someone who just owns the factory or the farm, someone who just seeks for rent, a landlord or someone, will make profits without contributing. So basically, I can buy an asset, let someone else manage it, let someone else rent it, and make profits, while the only thing I'm doing with that asset is owning it. Is this called contributing? Capitalists would go like, oh, but you decided whom you give your property so that they can be economically successful on it. So you contributed by choosing the correct person to do the job. No, really, fuck this. Everyone needs a home, for example. I'm, as a landlord, only choosing the person who will make the least trouble for me and can still pay me. Like, that's not me choosing the correct person for the job. And for like a farm or whatever else property, obviously I can retain my right to throw them the fuck off if they're not performing well. But this only means that as long as my interests are met, I have no incentive to actually encourage anything beyond that. And anyway, I'm not the one doing the labor. Me just owning shit that I got, like, I don't know, like Santa Claus shed a piece of gold into my socks one Christmas Eve and I bought a farm. And then I was the genius who put on the great farmers who then provided for the entire village. Is that how we're going to frame it? Is it not that the ingenuity and the labor and the work of the farmer who I just rented the fucking place to is the one who generated the contribution? Is it really me who should be benefiting this way from this? All right, never mind. We went on enough. So I'm going to strongly disagree. Most rich people deserve their money. Well, I just talked about this. So I'm going to claim that earning one's money should be correlated and tied to labor or to some act of creation, not to owning, not to finance speculating on the marketplace, on the financial market, not to anything which does not actually involve you doing some creative or transformative labor. So how do you even get to be a billionaire? Well, you get to be a billionaire by owning a ton of shit, putting people in jobs that you are not doing, and then reaping the benefits. Well, obviously, there are tons of rich people who are working all the time to manage their wealth. But at that point, you're already so fucking wealthy that managing wealth has in itself become a chore. And it's like this stupid Sisyphean task that genuinely benefits no one. So I think rich people don't deserve their money. And if there are people who are really, due to their incredible ingenuity, reaching some kind of deserved wealth, it wouldn't be a billionaire. All right. Deserve the money? No, strongly disagree. The government is more important than the economy. I would say both are equally important, neutral. We should have a minimal government alongside with a fully functional market. Okay, no. We need to, if we have a fully free market or functional market, we need government to regulate, because a free market will lead to tons of consequences that we do not want. It will lead to a ton of issues like monopolization, to name a very easy one. But also, a government needs to enforce labor protection, because if the market is free, then the markets, the market forces, the participants on the market can collude in order to push for certain labor standards. For example, if I am a learned, let's say, electrician, and all companies who hire electricians have talked to each other and told to each other, well, are we paying those electricians far too much? Let's just halve their wages across the board. They can't do that. They can simply collude. And I, as a laborer, have absolutely no way of dealing with this. So now a capitalist would say, well, but in a perfect competition, it would just mean that there would be one company which could then offer you more wages to pay for your competence. But you do realize that we've already halved this shit. And this corporation only needs to raise like by $1. And you do realize that across the board, they control the price of my labor, not me. But even then, like even if all of this could be debunked, this does still not tackle the issue of climate change. How would a free market with minimal government even incentivize that the corporations pay mind to climate change? They have no immediate profits off of it. The consequences of climate change will be dealt with by the people, by consumers, and by the remaining rest of governments who are so underfunded that they can't do anything about it. And the corporations just get to shrug and say, well, get fucked. So what you want is you want to disincentivize corporations from destroying and ruining the climate. How do you do this? Well, you don't do it by putting the onus to push against climate change onto the people, who you could tell them like, oh, but you have the right to decide whether or not you work at a company who respects climate change. If it's truly in your interest to respect climate change and do something against this, you shouldn't work in an unethical corporation. Well, this might be true, but this is like not how it works at all. So, for example, it's not in the laborer's hand that they have this kind of enormous bargaining power, that they could actually like have this kind of influence and choice over their workplace. Additionally, the profits are very, very different. So a company that would have, for example, no climate change regulations in place could produce much cheaper and could also pay its laborers much less, because and then sell for a much higher profit. Since they have more profit, they can buy off more shit on the market, which also means that they grow because they disrespected the regulations. And this will always be the case to some extent. So obviously you need to regulate, or else you kill us all. It's just simply how these corporations operate. The only logic that drives a corporation is profit, and the profit motive is the one that will always tend towards less climate change awareness, of less solution to the problem. Strongly disagree. It is necessary for the government to intervene in the economy to protect consumers. Strongly agree. Oppression by corporations is more of a concern than oppression by governments. Yes, more of a concern, yes. Not like to the extent that I don't care about government oppression at all. A strong government is required for a safe society. I disagree strongly. Anarchism causes chaos. Well, I don't believe that, because the way people talk about anarchism is quite the straw man usually. You can look at my other videos, because I've made a few on that topic before. The leader should be passed on genetically. Well, this is just unironic monarchism. Fuck off. Stronger government often leads to tyranny, which then leads to the death of the nation. Ooh, spooky, spooky. The death of the nation. Have you heard? The West is dying. We're literally dying right now. Haven't you heard? No. We're not dying. The nations are dying. And I don't know why stronger government would be the thing that causes nations to die. I'm not a fan of stronger government, but this is just a stupid fucking take. So, strongly disagree. I would rather have a totalitarian government than an anarchist one. No, I strongly disagree. My nation is better than most other ones. Nope, I'm not a nationalist at all. Fuck you. I dislike my nation. Nope, I don't dislike my nation. I just don't really care. International relations are very important. Yes, absolutely. Alliances are beneficial, but we're all like in the same ballpark right now. We should focus more on issues outside of our nation. So, yeah, we've reached the point where we should talk about things like global solidarity. I believe we should be very well aware of oppressions, genocides, and wars happening around the world. We should be aware of poverty happening around the world, especially if we live in a much richer Western American, European nation. And I think we should also be aware of all those issues which affect the global society all at once, like climate change, for example, just to name a little one. All right, yes, we should. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. Nah, that's just stupid. My religion should be spread as much as possible. Since I do not have a religion, you may as well spread my atheism. But since this is not how they mean it, I will strongly disagree. Theology is a good idea. All right, so theology in itself is not an idea. It is like a school of academic thought, like somewhat related to philosophy about interpreting text and scripture and to derive like philosophy from it. So I don't know. It's pretty okay. Yeah, I like it. Religion is just fiction for humans to develop. Well, I think this is true. Yes. Religion should play a much smaller role compared to the present. Yes. Yes. Churches should be taxed. I don't care. Religious organizations often provide the better help compared to other nonprofits. This seems to be a factual claim, and I cannot have the fact at hand. So, let's just go neutral. The economy is more important than the environment. So anyone who says agree to this take is an absolute idiot. What worth is your economy if you destroy the environment and make it uninhabitable for human beings? Think about that one. Once you know the answer, call me. Climate change is a hoax. No! Climate change is not as serious as the media portrays it. No! If we don't protect the environment, the economy will collapse. This is also true. What do you think will happen if you allow climate change to occur and we like get coastal areas flooded? Lots of like agriculture dying out and lots of animals dying out because of different climate circumstances. Tons of local industries becoming like obsolete depending on what it is, right? For example, this may sound stupid, but obviously you can't run a bus through a flooded city. So now that bus company is dead. And you can't rent out a flooded apartment. So those apartments are dead. Like everything in those fucking areas will be devoid of humans, and all industry and all business will die there. Completely. Not to mention that you will have to deal with a ton of climate refugees for whom there's no jobs available, fleeing into the countries deeper away from the flooding. And obviously, you know, refugees are a huge drain on economies. Like, we should take care of them, obviously. But if the climate apocalypse, let's say, it happens in this degree, then there will be not much of a way to deal with the situation at all. So yeah, the economy will fucking collapse. There should be more regulations on factories. Well, yes, labor regulations, for especially. We are not doing enough to protect the environment. Yes, each races have their own strengths and weaknesses. Nope, races don't have any inherent strengths or weaknesses. This is the race realist argument where they try to make out their black people hatred and the warrior gene shit as, oh, we all have individual strengths and weaknesses. The black people have big dicks and they're warriors, while the white people have culture and brains. No, fuck you. It's, I mean, all those kind of studies have been debunked. All the scientific literature on this has been fucking debunked. And it's all just some weird, backwards oriented reactionary essentialism because they can't get it into their puny little brains that there is no such thing as like essential differences between even cultures. But then there's race even more, right? Fuck this. Each race has their own strengths and weaknesses. Strongly disagree. My race is superior to other races or vice versa. Strongly disagree. We should judge people by their character rather than their race. Yeah. Racism is a real issue. Yes. Affirmative action is good. Yeah. All right. I am culturally liberal. True. Public ownership? Well, I guess. I'm a libertarian apparently because I like the central shit. I'm neutral on nation versus world. Okay. I am pro-secular. This is good. Deep greenism. Alright, 100% nature, I suppose. And a very pro-racial equality. Cute. Closest match, libertarianism. Libertarians are generally culturally liberal, but economically conservatives and want as much smaller state/government. So I did get a lot of decentral here, but I also got a lot of state ownership. You know what this means? That their fucking quiz kind of like does some shit wrong. Because markets are a decentral form of economy. While they mean God, let me sort out my thoughts. Okay, markets are a decentral form of economy because you have no planning, but everything is determined by market forces of competition, of supply and demand, of whatever else factors into this. What they mean here with central and decentral is government, though. So I am not in favor of a strong central government. I'm in favor of union organization, of worker corporations, of democracy at the workplace, of grassroots democracy at every community. And this is why I am decentral. But I believe that this decentral organization, especially the union and federations of different unions, should work together to enforce regulation on the markets, because free markets are not in the interests of people. They are optimizing for profit. This profit will always come from the people. This is why I believe that a decentral people who organize everything in the interests of the people, not in the interests of the central government, should keep the market in check, should prevent the market from becoming a machine of its own that will fight for its own interests. And this thing is not equipped to handle this amount of nuance. It is simply not. Here. Public ownership, state-owned. This is already a conflation. Public ownership does not mean state-owned. There's not a one-to-one dichotomy between state-owned and market-owned. How about worker-owned? How about community-owned? How about there is no state, but there's like only federated union structures of workers who own their own corporations? A structure of unions organizing workers' co-ops that kind of internationally, even if there's even a nation state, oh my god, organize this shit. Like, this does not need to be state-owned. Yet, anyways, I'm a libertarian apparently. Let's see what my next closest thing is. Minarchism is an ideology that wants a very small government. They think the purpose of government is only for protecting and enforcing laws. The type of government is called night watchman state. Liberalism is a left-leaning ideology. By the way, this is kind of wrong. That advocates for policies like state ownership. They don't support socialism. So liberalism is actually quite different. Actually, all like neoconservative and neoliberal and whatever positions are all liberal positions to some extent. The only deviation from liberal positions on the right are actually like, honest to God, like monarchism and fascism. Neoliberalism is a culturally liberal but economically capitalist ideology. Many people consider this as the current status quo. Apparently, I'm much closer to a neoliberal than, I don't know, anything that's not right. I mean, I guess this is all right wing. All right, let's look at more. Conservative libertarianism. What the point even? Isn't that just ANCAPism? Oh no, that's down there. They want a small state. Agorism. Agorists think that people could live in harmony without a state in an anarchist society called the non-aggression principle. They favor a free market. How's that different from anarcho-capitalism? State capitalism, baby! Oh, that's Stalin! Oh, that's Stalin, my dude! And China. Yeah, I see, this is how little I am a Stalinist or Maoist leaning. This is how little I am, that I'm even closer to these fucking right-wing ideologies than the left-wing authoritarianism. Anarcho-capitalism is an anarchist ideology that wants big corporations to rule over society. It's an extreme form of anarchy and capitalism. This is not even honest about what anarcho-capitalism is. All right, technocracy. Technocracy is an ideology that promotes the idea of people who are expert of technology should rule the nations. You know what? I would probably have gotten 100% on this shit if they had a single fucking question about this, because I agree that experts should have a disproportionate amount of influence over important big decisions and should be integrated in some capacity in this union structure that I described earlier. I haven't quite figured out how yet, but I believe it should be a very important thing. Maybe they would automatically, because of their social capital rising from their expertise. But, you know, this is so far into the future that I don't know. Individualist anarchism, let me guess, not the cool individualist kind, not the fucking ego boy kind, not the real good kind, not this one, not this individualist anarchism, unfortunately, but a form of anarchism which strongly advocates individualism alongside with anarchist government. No fucking question has covered this. Do they mean like the Randian individualism? I can become like the big dick property holder, and I can be Atlas, and I can shrug off all the poor people and whatnot, the fucking filth of society? You know what? This is an individualist. This is an egoist. This is fucking good. This is not. I can tell you, because you didn't ask me any proper questions on this. Conservatism is an ideology that's mainly about preserving the Western political model. They want small government, large military spending, and low taxes. It's one of the most popular right-wing ideologies in the West. Preserving the Western political model. I mean, most conservatives are fucking insane and they hate democracy. Okay, sure. I mean, most of their policies are pushed by lobby money, but sure. Neoconservatism is a new form of conservatism. Neoconservatives think that the goal of Western nations is to bring their model to the world. They're more internationally focused. Oh, so you mean imperialism? Aha. Alright, monarchism is an ideology that advocates a large government with a dictatorship, which leadership passes on by genetics. I apparently have 41.7% monarchism. So there is a monarchist bone in my body. Yes, queen. Constitutional monarchism. It's a form of monarchism with leaders out of power but needs to follow constitution to rule. Apparently, I like this less than monarchism, so go figure. Oh, I hit a button on my keyboard while I was throwing like a little remote control. Feudalism is an ideology that is based on monarchism. It is basically a monarchy with high importance of capitalism, higher class rule over lower classes property in exchange for land. Okay, fascism. I'm 28.8% a fascist. Favors centralized governments, which I don't do. Fascists think nation power should be put in high importance. Yeah, I believe this is true. Nazism is a form of fascism that is a bit more extreme and values the race of the people more. It favors centralized government. I don't believe there's a form of fascism which does not have an ethnic or racial or cultural superiority component to it. This is kind of inherent to nationalism. And also I believe all conservatism neatly fits into this, because conservatism usually is not about preserving the Western political model, but to preserve traditional values, which means they'd rather have the women not have the vote. which means they would rather have the gays not be able to marry, which means that they would rather not acknowledge that there are more than two genders, you fucks. Alright, whatever. More about the ideologies? Oh no! There's more! Alright, I don't care. This was my results.